The Roman Catholic Church is actually cursed. That's why there's so much PDF gay stuff everywhere. That's why 4 out of 5 priests in Rome are most likely homosexual. Vatican I says in Denzinger in 1792, the object of Catholic faith is not just the dogmatic ex cathedra pronouncements, but also anything universal ordinary teaching. And beyond that, even if it's not magisterial dogma, if it's just ordinary, not universal ordinary, which is protected by the charism of infallibility, but just ordinary normal teaching by the bishops or the Pope, what does Canon 752 say about non-dogmatic papal teaching? Does it say you have the freedom and the liability as you list to privately interpret and reject what you don't like from Leo or Francis or whoever? It never says this. This is a completely manufactured papal minimalist position that only came into vogue in the last few years by pop apologists who are dealing with our serious challenges to them. So when they have the struggle of making Nostra Aetate work, of making interreligious prayer with demonic religions work, demonic religions, satanic religions, what's the answer? I can hand wave it because of papal minimalism. Where in Vatican I and in these statements from Denzinger, right here in my tweet, where is papal minimalism? Papal minimalism is an ad hoc rescue for these people. And now their gay papacy is out here doing literal gay stuff just every week, and they just hand wave it. The Roman Catholic Church is actually cursed. That's why there's so much PDF gay stuff everywhere. That's why 4 out of 5 priests in Rome are most likely homosexual, according to books that have been written and talked about for decades. Tradcats have written books about the overtaking of the Roman Catholic world by Skittles. There's one called The Rite of Sodomy, written by a tradcat about that. Now, am I saying that there's no gay people in Orthodoxy? Every Orthodox bishop is a saint. Of course not. We've done 2 podcasts this last week on the fake and gay world of Orthodoxy. So you can never please these people or satisfy their dumb low-tier criticisms, because I never made the argument that Orthodoxy is true because we have less gay bishops. I'm pointing it out as a sign that the institution is cursed. The proof, it's a sign. Just like miracles aren't a proof, they're signs. They're signs of the true church. They're not proofs of the true church. If you doubt this article, oh, that's just the liberal press. Oh, it's the libs. 4 and 5 Vatican priests, that's within Rome, are gay, new book claims. If you doubt that claim, I encourage you to go to Rome. We spent a week there a couple years ago. As you walk around Rome, you'll notice vendors everywhere sell hot priest calendars. It is the gayest thing you have ever seen. It is real. This is not fake. This is the 2026 hot priests calendar in Rome. By the way, these all look like AI. These don't even look like real dudes. They probably created an AI. But prior to that, this is exactly what you see. This right here, walking around Rome, is vendors selling hot priest calendars. It's not ladies buying the hot priest calendars, you guys. It's dudes. Duh. Now that you've seen that, which is very real, how hard is it to believe 4 and 5 Vatican priests are gay? Am I arguing that this disproves Roman Catholicism? No. I know it's really hard for you guys to listen to an argument and to mischaracterize it and to straw man. I don't think I've ever heard an Orthodox person say that our church is true because there's less gay stuff or less PDF stuff. No one has ever argued that. It's a proof of the extent of the corruption and a sign, an indicator of a false church. It's actually the system level argument that disproves Roman Catholicism. That at a fundamental level, there are so many dogmatic contradictions and changes and innovations. That's the system level defeater. For example, Tim Gordon and his buddy Joe Enders recently made a video talking about how Joe Heschmeyer was refuted on feminism because Casti Connubii is binding. Now, I went into DM discussion with Tim about this because, well, now wait a minute. If Casti Connubii is binding, then Mortalium animos is binding. Now, Tim said, well, it is, but only in the parts that align with everywhere else that it's been taught. Do you see how silly this is from an epistemic standpoint? Because now we're at a point where we have to go, as I've been telling you guys for years, in order to actually know what's binding and magisterial, I would now have to cross-reference any single paragraph or line within an encyclical with every other Roman teaching to see if it was always taught. But wait a minute. Mortalium animos actually says twice the Roman See has always forbidden its members from partaking in ecumenical gatherings. So even on Tim's own basis for why only certain parts of Casti Connubii are binding and Mortalium animos are binding, even on his own grounds, the part about not having interreligious meetings and gatherings with false religions is binding. And it's even described as a apostasy. It's a leaving of the faith to engage in it. That means the popes are apostate on the Roman Catholic system's grounds. I know that you Roman Catholics are incapable of understanding hypotheticals like the Muslims and internal critiques, because every point at which they respond, every time, all the way back to 2018 with Lofton, is a tu quoque. What about your church? What about the EP? What about your bishops? What about? We will answer that, and we have, with a different paradigm. Why would I be subjected to a papal ecclesiology critique when I'm not a papist? They cannot fathom different systems because they don't understand paradigms and presuppositions, as we have said for 10 years plus. When you're an evidentialist, when you stack things up as a classical foundationalist, you literally just think that, well, you have the same problem. You don't like our Pope? Well, you got bad bishops. I don't have the papal system, you idiot. How can you not understand this argument that's been presented to you for about 10 years? If I thought the EP or the Pentarchy or whatever, if I thought that they were infallible, then your reply would work. It wouldn't be a tu quoque. It would be a valid internal critique. But you don't understand an internal critique. An internal critique that I'm making to your system doesn't work on my system. It's a different system with different rules. Duh. This is exactly what I haven't even watched Trent's video. I already know that that's exactly where Trent's going to go, because Trent cannot understand paradigm level arguments, paradigm critiques. He only understands evidentialism. And if you go back to our natural theology debate, that was the conclusion of the whole debate. Especially the critique of self-evidency. When we got to that point, Trent completely failed. He said something was self-evident, and then he said it relies on other things. Well, then it's not self-evident, Trent. I mean, no Roman Catholic that's out there can do epistemology at a 101 level. None of them. Why? Because their best hope was Skittles Trent Doherty, who literally had meltdowns and had to leave the internet in shame as the entire public viewing world turned on him and cucking Christianity. Now let's look at Mortalium animos. Oh, it's not 2 times, it's actually 3 times that is reiterated. 3! Look at paragraph 10. So, venerable brethren, It is clear why the Apostolic See has never allowed subjects to take part in the assemblies of non-Catholics. Never allowed it. Does that count as perennial ordinary teaching if it's never been allowed by the Roman See? Yeah. Who could conceive of a Christian federation of the members of which retain each of their own opinions in a private judgment, even in matters which do not concern the object of the faith, right? For example, those who affirm and deny the tradition to be found in divine revelation, those who hold to an ecclesiastical argument if a bishop and priest have been divinely constituted. In other words, you cannot have the church without the Roman pontiff and his infallible teaching authority. So there's no such thing as a confederation of Christians outside of communion with the Roman See. These pan-Christians who strive for this union would appear to be the noblest in ideas. However, everyone knows that you cannot do this apart from the Roman See. Thus, the Roman See has never allowed its subjects to partake in the assemblies of non-Catholics. Why is that? Because they are separated. So notice this is an ecumenism of return. By the way, Pius IX also, this is Pius XI in 1928. So 3 decades after this, from 1928 to 1968, 4 decades later, the church, apparently the Holy Spirit completely reversed what the Holy See had always forbidden to now promote. Notice that it's not just a question in Pius XI's encyclical, it's about schismatic, heretical Protestant Orthodox groups. Nostra Aetate is about other religions and the common ground there. So it's a violation of the idea, number one, of the ecumenism of return for an ecumenism of everybody is part of the concentric circles, partial communion with the Roman See, even the false religions. That's the model of Vatican II and Nostra Aetate. But here's the bind that the Roman Catholics are in. Even if you think Mortalium animos is just ordinary teaching, let's say it's at the lowest level, is it not binding according to Tim's argument then about if Casti Connubii is binding about marriage and women not running the household, then by the same logic, Mortalium animos a couple years before Casti Connubii is also binding. That means Roman Catholics are forbidden to take part in those interreligious ceremonies. And according to Canon 752, even if it's ordinary teaching, although not an assent of faith, a religious submission to the intellect and will must be given to the doctrines of the Supreme Pontiff and the College of Bishops regarding faith and morals when they exercise authentic magisterium, even if it's not ex cathedra or definitive action. See? And how do I know that? Go back to my tweet right here. I'll put it in the chat for you guys. 5 places in Denzinger, as well as, and I didn't even include when I wrote this letter. I don't think I knew about Casti Connubii 104 yet, which is another one. Casti Connubii also says you're bound by the normal, ordinary teachings of the Roman Pontiff, even if it's not magisterium. How come none of you, all you people in the chat, all you idiot Roman Catholics, you have nothing? You can't actually engage with any of the actual arguments. All you have is to call people names because you're losing. You're losing, hemorrhaging members. There's just a giant explosion in Colorado of Orthodox, a massive conversion of Orthodox. There's the Orthodox churches are tripling across the country. Triple catechumens. There's a Orthodox church that has 1,500 new members recently.